For years, Nicolas Maduro presented himself as a president, a head of state, and the inheritor of Venezuela's Bolivarian project. To U.S. prosecutors, however, he is the leader of a cartel empire. This empire has used state institutions to flood the world with cocaine while enriching itself through corruption and terror. The Department of Justice has launched its largest ever coordinated legal strike to sever the lifeblood of that empire: its money. The DOJ campaign is not about court filings alone. It's about depriving a criminal state of the wealth it has hoarded to evade justice and maintain power. They preach socialism while living in cartel luxury. Over $700 million in assets have been seized by the DOJ. These aren't abstract accounts, but tangible displays of excess: luxury mansions in Florida and the Dominican Republic, private jets, and expensive jewelry. Each seizure is a direct blow to the image Maduro cultivated. Every frozen dollar is a resource denied to his network for buying weapons, paying off officials, or smuggling cocaine. This action is backed by criminal indictments that have been building for years. Maduro and 14 current and former Venezuelan officials are charged with narco-terrorism, corruption, and trafficking. U.S. prosecutors accuse him of transforming Venezuela into a state-run cartel enterprise, with the Cartel de los Soles embedded inside the military. They turned Venezuela into a launchpad for cocaine shipments measured in tons, not kilos. The charges detail how cocaine was loaded onto government-cleared planes and how security forces protected shipments. This isn't just a state infiltrated by cartels. It's a cartel disguised as a state. The allegations are backed by a larger web of sanctions. Treasury designations lock Maduro and his cartel allies out of the U.S. financial system. Banks worldwide are warned that touching these funds risks sanctions. The State Department and DEA coordinate intelligence to expand the scope of frozen assets globally. Allied groups like Tren de Aragua are labeled as terrorist organizations alongside the Cartel de los Soles. This coordination makes escape routes vanish. The DOJ's campaign is designed to chase money not only in the US, but also across Latin America and Europe. By working across borders, the DOJ creates a web that follows cartel money into multiple countries, freezing it wherever it surfaces. It's a financial siege, cutting every artery that pumps illicit money into the cartel state. The money, once they're shielded, is now a liability that exposes them to global pursuit. For years, Maduro mocked sanctions and shrugged off international criticism, living in luxury while his country collapsed. This campaign reverses that despair. It shows that even the most entrenched narco-state leader is vulnerable when their money is cornered. The DOJ's largest ever coordinated freeze is not framed as the end of Maduro's regime, but as the definitive turning point. They project strength through wealth and impunity. Today, that wealth is evidence against him, and impunity is collapsing under the weight of coordinated law, sanctions, and seizures.
Before we get to that, I need your help. I'm trying to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I need your help. So I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe and help me out.
The story is about the redefinition of Maduro's image, from president to cartel boss, from untouchable to wanted man. The DOJ's legal and financial offensive appears to be the opening phase of a long-term strategy. This is not just another sanctions announcement. The target is not just traffickers or corrupt generals, but the cartel state nexus itself. The indictments against Maduro and over a dozen officials create a sweeping framework that can sustain prosecutions for years. These charges are not symbolic. They unlock the ability to pursue extraditions, international arrest warrants, and asset seizures worldwide. By framing the regime as a criminal conspiracy, the DOJ laid the groundwork for relentless pursuit. This isn't a case that ends with a single trial. It's a rolling campaign that adapts as new evidence and cooperation emerge. Each charge strengthens the architecture for dismantling the system one official and one offshore account at a time. The offensive isn't limited to courtrooms. Sanctions and asset freezes have already immobilized billions. The Treasury Department's strategy is to choke the arteries of cartel state finances. The logic is simple. No money, no power. Sustained over years, financial strangulation can degrade the cartel's operations and the regime's ability to govern. This campaign's breadth reflects a new level of coordination. DOJ prosecutions are backed by Treasury sanctions, DEA investigations, and State Department diplomacy. This is crucial. A global approach is needed to counter a globalized criminal political enterprise. The scale of this alignment signals longevity. This isn't a short operation. It's a structural campaign designed to endure until the networks are dismantled. Behind the legal and financial levers stands military power. The deployment of U.S. warships to the Caribbean is a statement of layered readiness. It sends a message to Maduro that military muscle supports the law enforcement front. This layered approach, law, finance, and force, creates pressure on multiple fronts, leaving fewer escape routes for the cartel-state alliance. This is psychological warfare. By targeting the wealth, safety, and futures of cartel-aligned officials, the campaign seeks to fracture loyalties. Officials are forced to calculate, stay loyal and risk indictment, or cooperate and salvage a future. This is how long-term cartel dismantling works, not just by arresting leaders, but by hollowing out their support networks. The offensive is about more than Venezuela. It's about the entire region. Cartel-state alliances export violence and instability far beyond their borders. By targeting Maduro's network, the DOJ is signaling that dismantling one of the hemisphere's most entrenched cartel states is essential to restoring stability. This campaign is as much about protecting regional order as about punishing crime. Without this action, these alliances would metastasize and entrench themselves, making reform impossible. The solution is this comprehensive, long-term offensive. It doesn't promise instant results, but it offers the only viable path to dismantling entrenched power. The legal system offers advantages that military strikes cannot match. Cartels fear losing money and losing freedom. Bombs and bullets might destroy a safe house, but they don't freeze bank accounts or lock leaders away for decades. The law reaches further, lasts longer, and digs deeper. Where missiles shatter walls, indictments shatter empires. Military strikes are often temporary. Destroy one lab and another appears. But when cartel allies are dragged into court, the consequences extend for decades. Criminal charges bind defendants for life. This is accountability that endures. Cartels are businesses. Their power rests on profits, billions laundered through shell companies. Military strikes cannot touch an offshore bank account, but the U.S. legal system can. Asset forfeiture laws freeze accounts, and sanctions cut cartel-linked entities out of global banking. A missile can destroy a shipment. A court order can destroy the network that financed it.
Before we get to that, I need your help. I'm trying to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I need your help. So I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe and help me out.
This distinction makes the law uniquely devastating. Legal action erodes cartel influence by weaponizing due process. Cartels thrive on secrecy and intimidation. Courtrooms shatter those illusions. Evidence becomes public record. Once leaders are held criminally responsible, their power to command through fear diminishes. The cartel image of invincibility cracks under the weight of evidence. Legal action also activates international cooperation. Mutual legal assistance treaties and extradition agreements bind dozens of countries. When U.S. courts issue indictments, allies are compelled to assist by freezing assets and arresting fugitives. A trafficker can't hide in Madrid, Bogota, or Geneva if extradition treaties ensure their return to a U.S. courtroom. Law turns geography into a trap rather than a shield. The most strategically valuable effect is its ability to incentivize defections. Facing life in prison, cartel operatives often cooperate. They trade intelligence for reduced sentences, feeding authorities inside knowledge of supply chains and leadership structures. Military strikes kill, but dead men tell no secrets. Legal pressure, by contrast, forces secrets out into the open. The legal system also minimizes harm to civilians. A drone strike can kill bystanders. Courtrooms avoid this trap. By targeting individuals with indictments and seizing assets through established legal processes, authorities strike at the heart of cartels without destroying communities. This preserves political legitimacy and secures broader international support. The psychological impact of courtroom victories is profound. Extraditions to U.S. prisons dismantle the mythology of untouchability. The dream of untouchable power collapses. Psychological dominance flows not from shock and awe, but from slow, grinding, inescapable accountability. This offensive exposes Maduro's hidden wealth, which is about detonating the foundation of a regime that thrives on secrecy and corruption. His grip on Venezuela depends on two pillars: the narrative that he represents the people against foreign pressure, and the reality that cartel money secures loyalty. Exposing the billions stashed in offshore accounts strikes at both at once. It unmasks the hypocrisy and weakens the cartel's confidence in him. The narrative of a defender of the poor collapses when vast fortunes hidden abroad are revealed. While ordinary Venezuelans suffer, Maduro and his circle siphoned wealth through narco-trafficking. This is a documented reality backed by U.S. indictments. The second rupture is inside his own house. Regimes like his are fragile ecosystems of loyalty purchased with money. But once that wealth is exposed and frozen or seized, fear and doubt creep in. Internal suspicion accelerates, and unity dissolves into rivalry. His control over the cartel network weakens because it's built on profit, not ideology. When profit disappears, loyalty splinters. Exposure also creates a powerful incentive to defect. Remaining tied to him looks more like a liability than an asset. The rational move becomes cutting a deal and cooperating. Each defection erodes his control, turning his fortress into quicksand. The revelation of hidden wealth also invites intensified international pressure. When proof of massive assets is laid bare, it strengthens the case for harsher sanctions and deeper asset seizures. The regime finds itself not only weakened at home, but increasingly boxed in abroad. The most lethal effect is on the cartel operations themselves. They thrive on liquidity for bribes, weapons, and payroll. Hidden assets serve as a war chest. When these assets are frozen, operations slow and payments falter. Every disruption of cash flow is a disruption of power. The narco-terrorism network begins to sputter. The psychological effect is just as important. Cartels project strength through secrecy and the illusion of untouchable wealth. Breaking that illusion shows vulnerability. The myth of invincibility dissolves, and with it, the fear that sustains power. For ordinary Venezuelans, the narrative of suffering for sovereignty explodes when Maduro's billions are revealed. It was never about sovereignty. It was about theft. The international legal framework is also being weaponized. The 1988 UN Convention demands that every member state confiscate the proceeds of drug crimes. It removes bank secrecy that once shielded cartel money, forcing nations to share records. This creates the legal glue that binds nations together. Without it, Maduro's billions would flow unchecked. Mutual Legal Assistance Treaties, or MLATs, provide the operating instructions for cooperation. They allow prosecutors in New York to request records from banks in Spain. They overcome jurisdictional gaps, allowing the paper trail to be followed across oceans. The Financial Action Task Force, FATF, also sets global rules for how banks monitor suspicious transactions. When a Venezuelan general funnels drug profits into a foreign account, FATF standards guide compliance officers on how to flag it and freeze it. This shared framework creates global vigilance. Public-private partnerships with banks are the most powerful weapon. Banks act as forward scouts, detecting anomalies and flagging suspicious activity. Without them, billions moving through shell companies would vanish. With these partnerships, they light up on enforcement radars. Extradition treaties and terrorism designations amplify the pressure. When the Cartel de los Soles is designated a terrorist organization, their financial movements are treated as threats to global security, unlocking faster freezes and harsher penalties. Extradition treaties ensure no corner of the world is safe. A Venezuelan official indicted for trafficking can be pursued across borders. For Maduro's circle, every trip abroad carries risk. Each frozen account stops money and also stops loyalty, which is bought inside the regime. Interrupt that flow and cracks appear. Cartel money doesn't sit in duffel bags forever. It flows and hides in banks, shell companies, and offshore accounts. The true chokehold that starves the beast is cutting off these offshore accounts. These hidden vaults of wealth are the bloodstream of trafficking. Shut them down, and you choke the organization from the inside. Cartels are ultimately businesses. Every bribe and shipment is financed through laundered money. When those accounts are blocked, cartel leaders can't pay foot soldiers or replace seized shipments. Logistics collapse. Networks that appeared invincible start to fray. The brilliance of financial warfare is its precision. It hits only the guilty. Without it, drug money is worthless. Offshore accounts turn those piles into power. When those accounts are cut off, laundering chains are broken. The psychological effect is equally important. Cartel power rests on the idea that their wealth is untouchable. When their bank accounts vanish and their yachts are confiscated, the illusion cracks. A bullet may kill one man, but a frozen account kills confidence across an entire empire. This global reach is key. Offshore accounts, by definition, cross borders, and shutting them down requires international cooperation. Once an account is frozen in one jurisdiction, related accounts in another are exposed. Violence is the cartel's weapon of choice, but money is their true dependency. Targeting money minimizes bloodshed. Sanctions, seizures, and financial freezes strike quietly, weakening cartels systematically. Every dollar trapped is one less for bullets and bribes. Cartels can always recruit more soldiers and rebuild a lab, but they cannot easily replace hundreds of millions frozen in offshore accounts. The DOJ's campaign is not framed as the end of Maduro's regime, but as the definitive turning point. By dismantling his financial empire, the U.S. aims to choke off the flow of cartel money sustaining his power. The insight has been sharpened into action. Narco-terrorist regimes don't survive on ideology alone. They survive on cash. And when that cash is frozen, their survival is in doubt. The reversal is profound. For decades, Maduro projected strength through wealth and impunity. Today, that wealth is evidence against him, and impunity is collapsing under the weight of coordinated law, sanctions, and seizures. The final truth is stark. Armed conflict can win battles, but only financial warfare wins wars. By cutting off cartel-linked offshore accounts, governments bypass the spectacle of raids and the cost of lives, and instead strike at the one vulnerability cartels cannot replace: money. This is not theory. It is happening, and it works.